At Access Pipeline, we are committed to providing a safe working environment for all of our employees and contractors. Protecting the health and safety of coworkers and the public, and safeguarding the environment affected by our activities is of the utmost importance. Therefore, safe and environmentally responsible operations are embedded in the Access Pipeline Health, Safety and Environment Policy, the HSE Management System, and in our core values and beliefs. And this commitment extends from our Board of Directors through to all employees. And these are not just words, but a 24/7 attitude that recognizes that the safe execution of work is a critical component to our overall success for both construction activities as well as day-to-day operations. I urge you to carefully watch the following information.
Access Pipeline is owned jointly by Devon Energy Canada and MEG Energy Corporation. Access Pipeline is responsible for all activities of the joint venture and was formed to construct, operate, and own the pipeline system assets, all of which are currently located in Alberta. The Access head office is located in Calgary, with field operations, tank storage, and pipeline control center based at the Sturgeon Terminal near Redwater. A second field office is located in Lac-La-Biche. Access currently receives diluent at Sturgeon Terminal from the Edmonton Diluent Pipeline, EDL, the Fort Saskatchewan Pipeline, TRICO, and the Redwater Diluent Line. From Sturgeon Terminal, the diluent is transported through the diluent main line to the steam-assisted gravity drainage heavy oil producing facilities owned by Devon and MEG in northeastern Alberta. A second pipeline system, known as the Blend Main Line, originates at the north end of the Access Pipeline system and terminates in Edmonton, where the blended bitumen is delivered through existing pipeline systems to downstream markets. Responsibilities and requirements. All employees and contractors are responsible to report to work well-rested and physically fit to be able to give full attention to your job. Meet or exceed applicable HSE laws, regulations, and industry standards. Ensure safe work practices, hazard identification, and environmental considerations are an integral part of the work to be undertaken. Be responsible for your own safety as well as the safety of others working around you. Refuse any unsafe work or task that you feel places yourself or coworkers in imminent danger. Report unsafe conditions to your supervisor to be addressed in a timely manner. Stop work immediately if an unreasonable health, safety, or environmental hazard exists. Contractors are required to adhere to their own safety programs as well as those in place by Access Pipeline. Use only trained, qualified individuals on any Access Pipeline sites. Allow sufficient time for and provide the appropriate equipment to perform assigned tasks. Check in regularly as set out in their respective working alone procedures. Enforce their HSE programs and procedures. The following are not allowed on any Access site: alcohol or drugs, firearms, smoking, cell phones or other electronic devices, behavior such as horseplay, wrestling, harassment of any type. Only authorized personnel are permitted on Access work sites. If you see suspicious activity, contact your Access representative immediately. Worksite requirements.
As an employer and owner, Access Pipeline takes its responsibility of providing a safe work environment for all employees and contractors seriously. Demonstrating conscientious work behaviors and the development and execution of safe work practices is a top priority. Safety of our people and the environment is the foundation for all activities at Access Pipeline. It is our expectation that all contractors bring the same safe and healthy work attitude with them at Access. This includes knowing your responsibilities and capabilities in addition to taking every reasonable precaution to eliminate workplace incidents. Your safety is extremely important to everyone at Access Pipeline. If you have questions about your responsibilities or believe something may be unsafe, it is your responsibility to seek assistance. If you are in doubt, stop and consult an Access representative before proceeding. Have a safe and productive day.
Orientation. When performing work at Sturgeon Terminal, you are required to sign both in and out of the logbook maintained by the site administrator located in the office building. When performing work at one of our other field locations, you are required to check in and out with your Access representative. Before starting work, you must undergo a contractor safety orientation. As part of our orientation process, you will be asked to provide current training certificates for the type of work that you will be performing. This may include WHMIS, TDG, and H2S. In addition, contractors are responsible for ensuring that they have the proper number of certified first aiders as well as the necessary means to treat injured workers. Hazard identification. Hazard identification and assessment of a worksite is a critical step in the prevention of incidents. Access Pipeline conducts written hazard assessments, also known as Job Safety Analyses, or JSAs, to assess the worksite and identify existing or potential hazards before beginning work. Contractors may use their own documented process for conducting a hazard assessment, provided it is deemed adequate by Access personnel. All workers involved with the work must participate in the hazard assessment. Workers that arrive after the JSA is completed must review and sign off the document before starting work. Safe work permits. Contractors performing work on Access sites will require a safe work permit prior to initiating the work. The safe work permit identifies current site conditions, special requirements including PPE and equipment, the requirement for a job safety analysis, verification tests of atmospheric testing, if additional requirements for hot work, cold work, confined space, or excavation work are needed. A permit is valid for the time specified and must not exceed the duration of the shift. Contractors must ensure they are familiar with requirements of the safe work permit before signing off. If receiving an Access safe work permit in a different location than your orientation, ensure that you are familiar with site-specific requirements, for example, muster points. A copy of the active permit is to be retained by the contractor during the work. When work has been completed, the permit copy is to be returned to the originator. Personal protective equipment. Personal protective equipment, or PPE, is your last line of defense against injury or illness in controlling workplace hazards. Personnel using PPE must be trained in the proper fit, use, cleaning, maintenance, and storage for the types of PPE required. All protective equipment must meet CSA, ANSI, or other applicable requirements. The following PPE is required as a minimum on Access operational work sites and areas. Eye protection. Safety glasses that protect from frontal and side impact from objects or particulates. Foot protection. Protective footwear must have ankle support, for example 6 to 8 inches high, a minimum of toe, heel, and sole puncture protection plates, for example CSA Grade 1 represented by a green-colored triangle. Head protection. Hard hats are required except when in vehicles or equipment with enclosed cabs or while in control rooms, offices, maintenance shops, or other areas where an overhead hazard may not be present. Fire retardant clothing, FRC. Access's standard for flame retardant clothing is Nomex 3A with high visibility markings on the coveralls recommended. Clothing made of 100% cotton, wool, or leather must be worn underneath. Exposed hoodies or hard hat liners, unless FRC rated, are not permitted. In performing your JSA or hazard assessment, you may determine that additional PPE may be required. This may include respiratory protective equipment. If in a situation immediately dangerous to life or health or in an oxygen-deficient environment, either positive pressure self-contained breathing apparatus, SCBA, or supplied air breathing apparatus, SABA, with an escape provision must be worn. For non-immediately dangerous atmospheres containing gas vapor or particulate contaminants, the appropriate cartridge, filter, or combination type of respirator must be worn. Workers who are or may be required to wear respiratory protective equipment must be clean-shaven where the facepiece meets the skin to ensure an effective facial seal. Other limb or body protection. Additional PPE may be required where there is a danger of injury to a worker's hands, arms, legs, or trunk of the body, and may include goggles, chemical splash, or face shield. Proper clothing to address different work environments, for example, severe winter weather. Appropriate hand protection when working with high voltage, handling chemicals, crude oil or products, or when the probability of abrasion exists. Plug and/or muff-type hearing protection must be worn in posted areas where the noise level at the worker's location exceeds 85 dBA. Personal flotation device or life jacket when a drowning hazard exists. High visibility apparel when designated as a spotter or signaler or when working on or adjacent to roadways. Safe work practices. Safe work practices are a means of controlling hazards when performing a task with an element of risk to people and resources. Safe work practices must be, in writing, available to all employees and contractors, understood and complied with by all personnel using them, and enforcement provided by supervision as necessary for non-compliance behavior. Confined space entry. A confined space is one that is enclosed or partially enclosed and has restricted access and egress. Examples include storage tanks, sumps, and other similar spaces. The elimination of hazards, for example, purging the atmosphere inside a tank, must be the first priority, followed by job planning, hazard identification, and preparation. Prior to entering a confined space, a pre-job meeting must be conducted. Suitable approved procedures must be in place to protect the worker. A rescue plan must be in place that specifies if rescue equipment must be either available or in place to aid in the extraction of workers in the event of an emergency. A confined space entry safe work permit issued. A confined space checklist and JSA must be completed. Required PPE must be donned. During the confined space entry, a safety watch is positioned so that visual contact and direct communication is made with inside workers. The safety watch must never attempt rescue. Other workers must be made available or on standby to physically handle a rescue situation. Driving and vehicle operation. While weather and road conditions and the actions of others are generally beyond our control, we can decide to drive defensively, which takes into account the actions of others, or defer driving if in extreme conditions. Requirements for vehicle operations on access sites include: drivers shall operate vehicles in accordance with provincial laws and regulations. Vehicles on the worksite must be maintained and operated in a safe and reasonable manner. Complete visual pre-trip inspections to ensure vehicle safety considerations are acceptable. Where practical, abide by the access back-in protocol when parking. The posted speed limit on access sites is 10 km per hour. Electrical safety. To minimize the hazards associated with electricity, workers must consider all electrical circuits and equipment to be live or energized until proven otherwise. Properly bond, for example, bare metal to bare metal and ground equipment where necessary to prevent arcing, sparking, or static. Use only explosion-proof electrical equipment when flammable liquids and gases could be present. Ensure all diesel trucks or other equipment on site are equipped with shut-off devices to prevent ignition. Equipment. Preventative maintenance. Preventative maintenance extends the life of the facilities and equipment and minimizes unscheduled downtime that causes major problems. At Access Pipeline, we will ensure that contractors have completed scheduled inspections and maintenance on equipment brought on site as per manufacturing specifications. Check the condition of rented equipment and ensure any necessary maintenance is completed before use. Ask for proof of training. In addition, you may be asked to provide a demonstration of how the equipment works. Cranes. When working with cranes, hoists, and lifting devices, it is important to ensure that work is done within the rated capacity of the manufacturer's guidelines. A log for each lifting device must be kept readily available with equipment information, maintenance records, and inspection records. Cranes and hoisting devices are to be operated by competent personnel and must work with an experienced signaler if applicable. The operator must keep the load as close to the ground as possible. Workers must ensure they do not walk under loads being hauled by cranes. Fall protection. Working at height. Workers must be trained and use a fall protection system whenever working at a height of 3 meters, 9 feet or higher. Anchor points and barricades must be engineer approved. A written fall protection plan must be in place before work at height tasks can commence. When working at heights, the area below the worker must be roped off or other equivalent measures taken by the worker to protect others on the worksite. All scaffold and platforms used for the installation, removal, or maintenance of equipment shall be constructed, maintained, inspected, and used in accordance with Alberta regulations. Ladder safety. Everyone using portable ladders at access worksites must follow regulatory requirements and manufacturing recommendations. This includes: use ladders for their intended purposes only. Ladders with faulty steps or other worn components are not to be used. Ladders must be fully opened and level and secured against movement when necessary. When climbing or descending a ladder, do not carry anything that will prevent holding on with both hands. When not in use, ladders are to be stored on a rack or secured against a wall. Fire protection. Good housekeeping is essential in the prevention of fires. For each work area, the contractor is required to supply and maintain adequate firefighting equipment. The equipment should be sufficient to handle fire emergencies which might occur during the work activity. Always keep fire extinguishers visible, easy to access, and properly maintained. Ground disturbance. Before conducting a ground disturbance, contractors must ensure that proper drawings, for example, as-built, are obtained, reviewed, and understood. Additional approvals, for example, a crossing agreement, are obtained if a ground disturbance is taking place within 5 meters of a facility. Necessary first calls have been completed and a locate map obtained. The work area has been swept by competent line locators for an additional 30 meters beyond the proposed ground disturbance. Differences between the locates and drawings are to be fully investigated and addressed prior to ground disturbance. Underground facilities within 5 meters of the proposed ground disturbance are hand exposed. A safe work permit, job safety analysis, and ground disturbance checklist have been completed. When a ground disturbance is in progress, ensure that requirements outlined in provincial regulations and the Access Code of Practice for ground disturbance are met or exceeded. Markings remain highly visible to all involved. Spotters are designated as appropriate. Barricades are erected to prevent others from possible injury. Shoring or backsloping occurs before workers enter excavations greater than 1.2 meters or 4 feet. Safe access and egress from the excavation is available. The spoil pile is stored at least 1 meter away from the edge of the excavation. Competent supervision is on hand at all times during the ground disturbance. Personnel supervising ground disturbance are certified in an approved course, for example, Ground Disturbance Level 2. During the ground disturbance, if an unidentified facility is discovered or a facility strike occurs, work must stop immediately. Work will not restart until directed to do so by an access representative. Hand and portable tools. The equipment that is used on the worksite is integral to your job. Injuries with tools are most often caused by unsafe work practices. To ensure safe operation and maximum efficiency, all tools and handheld equipment must be inspected prior to use, be in good condition, and be used only for the job in which they were designed. When inspecting tools or handheld equipment, ensure that all machine guards are in place and working, electrical cords are in good condition with no exposed or worn wires, and safeguards and power cutoff switches are working. If found unsafe, tag and place the tool where it will not be used until repaired. Hazardous atmospheres. Contractors are expected to bring their own personal monitors to access work sites when performing work where exposure to hazardous atmospheres may occur. Personal monitors must be calibrated and bump tested as per unit manufacturer requirements. Lower explosive limit. Combustible gas detection must be used to determine the presence of explosive mixtures by measuring the percent of the lower explosive limit, or LEL. The LEL is important because if this percentage is small, it takes only a small amount of liquid vaporized in air to form an ignitable mixture. Continuous monitoring for LEL must be conducted at all times when performing work in hazardous areas. Hot work cannot be performed when vapor concentrations exceed 20% of the LEL. H2S. H2S may be present at any access facility. For entry into an atmosphere containing levels of H2S above 10 parts per million, approved positive pressure breathing apparatus must be worn. Inspections. Worksite inspections, including good housekeeping, must be conducted before and after site work is to be done to identify and prevent the development of unsafe working conditions. In particular, equipment, exits, stairways, aisles, roadways, and work locations in general must be kept clear of obstructions at all times. All work sites must be left in an orderly fashion at the end of the workday or job. This includes cleanup of the area, tools removed, and all garbage disposed of in an appropriate manner. With good housekeeping and performing preventive inspections, we can make the worksite a safer place for all of us. Lockout tagout. Before maintenance work begins on any equipment, all sources of energy that could result in accidental movement of equipment or otherwise cause damage to a person, property, or process must be locked out and tagged out at the main source of energy or control device. A method to verify the effectiveness of the lockout before work commences must be performed. Contractors are expected to have their own personal lock with unique identifier marking when performing work in areas that have equipment isolated. Manual lifting. Manual handling and lifting exposes employees to an increased risk of strains and sprains to the lower back. By following proper manual lifting techniques, you can reduce the possibility of injury to the back or other parts of the body. Whenever possible, a mechanical aid such as a trolley, lifting ramp, or overhead crane should be used. Do not attempt to lift an object unassisted if unable to do so safely. WHMIS and TDG. WHMIS is the Workplace Hazardous Materials Information System. Access requires that all workers are trained in the safe use, handling, and storage of the controlled products that they would use or come in contact with in jobs that they perform. Contractors must provide and have easy access to the Material Safety Data Sheets, or the MSDSs, for the controlled products that are used. Remember to always use the proper PPE illustrated on the labels or as noted on the MSDS. To ensure the safe transportation of dangerous goods by Access or its contractors, the materials must be handled in accordance with the Transportation of Dangerous Goods, or TDG Act. All workers preparing for the transport, transporting, or receiving of dangerous goods must have current TDG training. Storage tank and live piping safety. Contractors will not operate valves, switches, and alarms at any Access worksite unless directed to do so by an Access representative. In addition, no ignition sources of any kind shall be allowed around live piping or inside tank firewalls unless a hot work permit has been issued and the area is monitored for flammable vapors. Tank berms can be crossed at designated areas only. Incident management. An incident is defined as any undesired event that does or could result in harm to people, property or equipment damage to the environment, the loss or interruption of process, loss of product, or security breach. Incident management includes the reporting of near misses so that circumstances can be investigated and improvements made. All incidents that occur on the worksite must be verbally reported to your Access representative within 1 hour of occurring. A follow-up report will be required within 72 hours. Emergencies. In the event of an incident that requires an emergency response, contact an Access Pipeline representative immediately. The Access Pipeline emergency phone number is 1-866-987-3899. You will find this number posted at all Access locations, on your safe work permit, and on the inside of your Access contractor handbook. You will be asked by the Access Pipeline representative to state your name, the nature and location of the emergency, and your callback number. The alarm, if sounded for an evacuation, indicates that you must quickly stop work and shut down all sources of ignition. Pull vehicles or equipment to the side of the road, shut off the equipment, and leave keys in the ignition. Keep the radio or phone lines clear. Check for wind direction and visible hazards before determining the safest route to the muster location identified during your orientation or on your safe work permit. Remain at the muster location until directed by an Access Pipeline representative. Your Access Pipeline representative will reissue your safe work permit before you return to work. Environment management. Operating in an environmentally responsible manner and complying with all applicable regulations is a priority for Access. As a minimum, all contractors and employees must know and understand environmental regulations and requirements for the job. Make sure that any required approvals are in place before starting work and that the conditions listed in the approvals are followed. Provide the required equipment and procedures to manage the environmental impacts of operating activities and prevent pollution. Ensure that all spills, regardless of size, are reported. Begin cleanup immediately and, if necessary, obtain direction as to the proper methods needed to reduce any negative impact. Ensure vehicles are driven in a manner that reduces risk to both wildlife and domestic animals. Keep traffic on designated access roads and rights-of-way. Comply with regulatory waste management practices. Reducing, reusing, recovering, and recycling are an important part of the Access pipeline culture. Where possible, eliminate or reduce wastes and conserve energy and water. Stakeholder relations. Access Pipeline recognizes long-term business interests are well served by establishing a lasting, positive relationship with stakeholders in communities along our pipeline system. Stakeholder concerns must be immediately brought to the attention of your Access Pipeline representative so that prompt and corrective action can be taken.
It is essential that you review all of the Access Pipeline HSE requirements, as well as your job-specific responsibilities before undertaking any work. If you are unsure about your responsibilities, let your supervisor or Access representative know and ask for a review of the requirements before proceeding. Your support and participation is necessary to ensure a safer workplace for yourself and others. Let's all work together to ensure we end every day safely. Thank you.